Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Aging and Spirituality podcast. I'm Kathy Lee Taylor.
And I'm Chris Jensen.
And we are so happy to have you back. We have some very interesting conversation today. We're going to be talking about a spiritual practice and how you apply that to making money. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. So we're going to talk about how to practice presence. In other words, bringing your essence into the idea of how to make money so that you learn how to do that by bringing your spiritual essence into that process. So many of us are struggling with this kind of idea. What we want to do to earn an income often becomes in conflict, or we question whether that is good for our spiritual practice or not. So how do we make that decision? How do we make that choice about what we want to do for a job or what we want to do as a career choice? And how do we do that? How do we do that? What is the process to be able to make sure that you stay centered in spirit when you're on the spiritual path and still do something that you enjoy, that you love, but is an expression of who you are? So this is the premise that we're going to talk about today. So if you're thinking about what to do for a job, or you want to shift into a new job, or you're thinking about you want to have a career, or you want to be an entrepreneur, these are all things that we struggle with when we're on this spiritual path, and what is the right way to make money. So one of the first things that I wanted to mention and talk about was the question of your passion. Is your passion something that you should make into a business? And of course, this is an opinion. I'm not telling you how you should do it or what's right for your life, but I'm going to tell you a story about what has and hasn't worked for me. And I hope that there will be some insights in there for you. I'm certainly not saying that it doesn't matter that you love what you do, because, and if you're passionate about something, that's probably an indication that you would be good at it, that it would be, because you're enjoying it, that spending your time doing that would be good. But whether it brings in money and satisfies that part of your life requirement is in question. So some of the people have real false notions about what their spiritual gifts really mean. So for example, I can remember going through the process of thinking, well, I'm very intuitive, or I'm very psychic, so maybe I should do this in my life, or like maybe I should be a card reader, or should do, and of course, none of those things were appropriate or right for me, and certainly things that wouldn't have been right to go down the path to make money in my life. That doesn't mean other people are not doing it. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about what works actually for me. So I also wanted to say, and I want Chris to comment on what we've talked about so far, but I also wanted to say that, sometimes we get into areas where we think, well, I'm really highly empathic, so I might, just find a way to help everybody who's suffering with their own empathy in life, or their own codependence. That also can be a trap. And you'll see what I'm talking about when I talk about my story of learning to be a coach. So sometimes the lessons that we have in life that are making us grow, that are making us move forward on our spiritual path, really are not indicative of what we should do to make a living, to make money. So I'll give you an example of my story. But Chris, what are you thinking as you're listening to me talk?
Yeah, I think there's a big issue there. People feel a lot of pressure with the whole concept of whatever your passion is, that's where you're going to be successful. Right. Well, that may or may not be the case. I mean, expressing spiritually means just that, expressing your values in whatever you do. And sometimes, the things that are most dear to you are things that you need, but not necessarily something that you need to be doing for others. Yes. Or that you need to be making money at it. Sometimes you need to be just giving your time.
Yes.
To something you really care about.
And there's something about this that feels sacred about your spiritual process, right? Your spiritual practices and those lessons, they're for you. They're not necessarily for anybody else or something that you need to take into the world and try to make money off of. So that's just a cautionary note, because let me tell you just a little bit about my story, and maybe you'll see better where I'm coming from. Because when I first started working as an entrepreneur, which was very young, in my early 20s, all I cared about was making money, because I had certain goals. I wanted to have a house. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a child. So those became my goals at that time. And it really didn't matter what I did to make money, as long as it wasn't illegal or bad, or I didn't hate it, that kind of thing. It was, I just needed to kind of carve out a niche for myself. So I mean, back then I really tapped into my innate skills. I had a lot of business skills. I really knew how to run a business innately. I knew how to build a business. I was good at marketing. I was good at a lot of things that had to do with creating a business. So becoming an entrepreneur was very natural, because I learned how to go through all the steps of building a business. And so it was very successful, and I made good money, and I got the things that I wanted: homes and cars and families and kids and all of those things. So looking back on that particular time in my life, there's no regrets there. I did well. I did what I wanted to do. And I certainly don't think it stood in the way of my spiritual growth, because it allowed me to go to classes, yoga classes. It allowed me to have the time to do my spiritual practice, which is what I was focused on as much as I possibly could when I wasn't, at work making money. So, but recently, as I got older, I look back and I think, wow, I couldn't do now what I did back then. Because if I tried to sit down now and focus on doing a job just for the sake of making money, I can feel the energy just get drained out of my body. Literally, it is the oddest thing. I'm not going to lie. Even today, I was thinking about this service that I've had for years. And I was thinking, well, I could expand that out into Canada. I could do this and I could do that. And I started researching, and I'm on my computer and I'm looking this stuff up. And like an hour later, I realized that I'm just going, like, like there's no part of me that wants to go down that road anymore. So yes, it does change. It did change for me, as I got older. And in the last 4 years or so, I felt really guided to understanding what it meant to be a coach, and to working with people on finding their inner self. So I still am in this process. I don't know where that's going to end. I've spent, 4 years getting a certification and becoming really aware of particular processes that help people if they want to transform their lives. And I've done some coaching that I've really enjoyed and that I've really felt was successful. So I feel like that journey, that next step in my journey, has taken me to a place where I really understand some of my strengths and some of my weaknesses. And I've learned how I like to spend my time more at this particular point in my life.
See, I think, let me just stop you there. That's really important.
Okay, please.
It's how you like to spend your time, right?
Yeah.
That's really critical, because you're not just thinking, how can I make money?
Right.
You're thinking, how can I spend my time? And as you think about that, then the doors open.
Yes. So what, okay, so this is a good question for you. What do you think are the characteristics of a day when you feel like you are spending your time in the way your soul is guiding you to? How does that feel on a day-to-day basis? Because there's, times when I feel lost, like, what am I doing? And times when there's just so much open space that I have time to create, but I don't necessarily feel like I want to create, So there's these things that I deal with that I never had to do when I was always on a track. Like a few months ago, I was starting to head towards a particular business, and there was like 5 weeks where I was really pumping work and really involved and really getting into it and really enjoying it. And then all of a sudden the rug got pulled out from under and the business deal didn't go through. So there is a way when I get involved with my mind and my intellect and I'm doing what I'm good at, that I'm throttling forward. And I would say that that was enjoyable. But then again, that got taken away again. I found myself in this place where I'm just wondering, how does soul want to express next? And so that's what I'm trying to focus on today, is how do I really tap into that? How does the soul want to express next when it comes to taking care of yourself?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking, like, I've worked in the past, I've had very intense marketing jobs. And at the same time, I did a lot of teaching and sharing of yoga, which was, like having two jobs.
Yes.
And I mean, I did it because I needed the money from the marketing job, and I did the yoga because I love doing that. And the interesting thing is that when the marketing job went away, at first it was like, oh, yes, and then it was like, well, what am I going to do?
What am I going to do?
How am I going to make some money? But just by tapping in, like when I'm serving and, sharing yoga, there's a flow and there's an openness, and I'm not making any money at it. I'm just doing it. I mean, there's just a flow, and it's right. And there's an energy, we call it Shakti in yoga, there's a tremendous flow of energy.
Right.
And I've found that I just open myself up, and sometimes it's just helping people, like my daughter with the new baby, I mean, there's just that flow, and it's going, and things come, things come to
that help with the financial stuff.
help with the finances. Yeah, it's not the same level.
Yes.
It's not the same level.
It feels different, and it's scary for a lot of people, because they can identify how to be in that flow. But when the bills aren't getting paid, that flow goes away real quick.
It goes away really fast. It goes away really fast. And and if we get tight and anxious about it, which we all do, then that makes there is no flow.
Right. There is no
cut it off. We
Yes.
cut it off. Yeah.
So we get back to that experience. So here's an interesting thing. Listen to this, because this is an exercise that I actually developed for myself. Going through this process now, just trying to consolidate. Okay, I had this great opportunity, and now I'm thinking, I don't know, how is my coaching going to play, or am I being called to do something different, or what's happening here? So what I've been doing is I've been thinking about the idea of how to create or manifest from essence versus. Okay, so for example, here's what I mean. Typically, when you hear people talking about creating, they'll say, well, imagine what it is that you want in the future, right? Just picture it, and that will bring it to you. I really think that is not true. I think that what happens is your mind gets in there, and it goes, it's like cherry picking all the good stuff. I'll have this house, and it'll look like this, and then I'll have this, and it'll be by the beach, and then I'll have this. And the mind is just like taken off in its own direction and does whatever it wants to do, but there's no power behind it. There's no creative, real essence behind that process of imagining. And I'm not sure why I feel that way, but that's what makes sense to me, because if you think about it, if there is no future, it doesn't exist besides being a thought in your mind, right? If you think of the future as just a huge field of possibility, right? Then all of a sudden, what you can do is you can bring your awareness back into yourself and get very connected to your essence. And then the power of that creating connects you to where you're being called to go next. And that's what creates your future, not you trying to imagine it or make pretty pictures or say, I'm going to win the lotto or whatever it is. You're back to connecting to your essence. And you might, when you're in there, it's a real visceral experience, you maybe we'll take people through something like that, but you tell me what you think we should do here, Chris. But so you may get in there and have a shift or an experience. Let me just tell you what I did the other day, thinking about, okay, what are my next step now that this other thing's fallen through? What do I want to do? Maybe with my coaching, maybe not. Maybe there's something entirely new waiting for me to do. And so I just went into my essence and really got present, really as present as I possibly could. And there was an experience of light, like I felt like a key going into a door, and there was a unlocking and an opening of energy. So there was a shifting in the energy, and then a kind of an expansion of light that happened there. I didn't see a big house that might be in my future or any end goal that might. It was just this visceral feeling of opening and opening, being receptive to what is coming next. And I thought, okay, I could feel a real shift in my energy, a real shift in my mood. And I felt like I didn't need to do anything else. What I was learning, and these are the interesting words, is how to bring my being into the doing. So when you're doing something in the world, like you're doing work to make money, or you're doing work to help people, or whatever it is, the question for me is, how do I bring more of that essence of being into that doing? What would you say to that? Because that's the exercise that I thought was really powerful. I've been practicing.
That's a very powerful exercise, because when we, visualize things, very often that's just something that our ego thinks we want.
Right, exactly.
And what you did is you attuned with what your soul wants, what your inner self wants.
Exactly.
And the trick is to allow that to manifest without impeding it, and to just let it flow. And it's hard sometimes because we don't know what it is.
Yes.
Like I like to put the thought out to open myself to abundance without putting anything on it, without saying how or why or how much.
Right.
Just so that that flow can happen.
Yes.
And you want to commit the energy to it. You're committing the energy by opening yourself in that way.
Right.
That commitment of energy is very, very important. Ramakrishnananda loved telling the story about Swami Priyananda when he was in Yogananda's ashram, and they needed money for a dorm for the monks, and they needed $50,000. And this is back in the 40s, 50s, when $50,000 was a lot more than it is now. And so, they didn't have any way to get this money. And this monk, he said, I'm going to just fix harmoniums. Well, who uses harmoniums back then? Not many people,
right.
But he just started fixing harmoniums. He was committing energy towards this. He wasn't building the dorm or doing fundraising. He just started fixing harmoniums, and whatever money he made was going to go towards this dorm. Well, somebody heard about this, wrote about it, and a very wealthy woman read the story. She was touched by it, and she donated the money for the dorm.
Wow. Okay, so, that's the kind of energy I want in my life right now. That is the kind of miracles.
Right. He committed the energy with just fixing the harmoniums. That was his flow of energy, and the universe responded.
Wow. This is, thank you. That's a great story and a great example of what I'm talking about, because it really does take a leap of faith. You're gonna feel this huge void in your life, like the fear of unknown will come by and be like, what are you doing? Get off your butt and get a job, whatever that sounds like in your head, the stuff that's worked in the past. And I've had opportunities to do those things, and I keep telling myself, just follow this openness, follow this sense of light, this sense of whatever it is you feel called in the day to do. Go ahead and do that, and allow yourself the time and space to just be in that presence. And so to be followed up and see what happens in the future, what comes of this. But that feels more to me like the way to create abundance, really anything in your life, is through that creative process of connecting to your source in a way that it can really just channel through you. Because universal source is so much more powerful, so much more unlimited than we are, you
It's so
know,
much bigger than the
bigger.
limitations we put on ourselves. We
Exactly.
don't know, our ego just knows certain things, but if we relax and open in that way, yeah, your practice was just right on target.
Yes, it feels, but, and just so I'm real clear about this point, the understanding that your future doesn't exist is really important. Really think about that, because a lot of people, you know, one of the things about my near-death experience was that I got really clear that time and space does not exist. And when you understand that, you know that the future really is just potentiality. It really is a gazillion things that could happen. And your little being doesn't have the control over that, you know? I mean, yeah, you can sit in your little meditation mat and you can picture your horse that you want to ride, or your person that you want to bring into your life, or whatever it is, big, you know, grandiose thing that you want. But there's no power behind that in terms of the creative consciousness. It's when you actually go inside and really connect to that essence and practice. The best tip that I can give you in this conversation is to say, practice presence every day. And you'll find that presence through meditation. And I want to be aware, keenly aware, and say that I know that some people can't meditate and won't meditate, and they have their reasons for doing that. And so practice presence by just being still, watching your breathing, getting as centered as you possibly can inside your body, so you can feel that, you know, somatic and visceral response to the energies that you are, that created you. And you will have that experience of connecting to the essence of who you are. When you have it, you won't be guessing, you won't be wondering, you will know it's happened. You feel that connection, you know what it is. And so if you can just keep going back to it, more and more and more, that is the challenge, and really the path of being on the spiritual path.
But just taking that step to open yourself,
yes,
it will happen. It
will happen. And being receptive. Is there anything you want to say about what, you know, once you open yourself, and how do you be more receptive during your day to what?
You never know where something's going to come from, so you want to shed your judgment about that, your expectations.
Don't name things. That's the other thing, right? If you don't name things, you're not being judgmental. So, and also I think some of the keys are like, is your goal for the greater good? That's usually
that's something there, you know,
a good pointer, you know, or
is it beneficial to others?
Right. And does it feel like just your ego is getting pumped? You know, because usually, I mean, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing if your ego is getting pumped. It's probably not coming from your soul, however. So there you go. I think you have any other
work with. A lot to work with.
It is, but it's really powerful. This particular exercise that I was doing this week, just really staying into it. I found that once I found that place, and I, you know, forgot about the idea of you have to imagine your future into your current place, and let go of that. And I just said, okay, the past is behind me. I don't need that. I can let go of that, right? So now the only moment that really matters is this one right here. This is the only one that I have in the now, that I have the power to change, make something different, create something, right by connecting with the source that made me. So that's really how I wanted to start this talk out. And I hope that point came across, is that if you can practice presence, I've been writing about this a lot on my social pages. If you can find different ways of practicing presence, you know, that's what yoga teaches you how to do. You know, postures will help you do that by releasing stress, and meditation helps you do it by connecting with yourself. Breathing helps you do it. It's so relaxing. And it literally, when you get good at it, you can just sit down and go, okay, it's time to practice being in the moment, and your breath will just take you in, you know. Very, very powerful. So there you go. I hope that answers some of your frustrations and questions about work, and what someone should do when they're on a spiritual path to make money. So
Yeah, I think it was great input.
good.
It's got me thinking.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I went on quite a bit today. So I appreciate your time. Please keep listening in. If you have questions, you know how to get a hold of us, and we'll see you again next week.
See you soon. Bye-bye.